We all have within ourselves an element of all or nothing, right? Either I feel really good about myself or I feel really bad about myself. Either I did a great job on this or, this job was horrible. Had that great speech that I knocked the socks off of people, or I was so boring. It was pathetic. This all or nothing kind of thinking is something that we can all relate to. The thing is that there's a whole group of people out there that all or nothing is more than just something that happens sometimes, but it's a very real process that happens daily to them, and that shapes their whole world and sense of productivity. And it can be crippling. So today's podcast, we're going to talk about perfectionism. We're going to talk about all or nothing thinking, where it comes from, what are the signs of it, what the pitfalls are behind all or nothing thinking, and what are some things that we can do to identify it and to mitigate it and get things back on track. My name's Daniel Ifra, LCSW. Welcome to my Sainstorming show, where we sainstorm, not brainstorm, but sainstorm ways of keeping each other sane in a complex world. Here we are talking about all or nothing thinking. All or nothing thinking sounds pretty straightforward, but as we're going to see today, it's really not necessarily the case. And more often than a person realizes, all or nothing thinking can be a significant piece of any individual's struggle in mental health and not necessarily achieving the goals that they are looking to achieve. So that's something that we have to look out for. Now, just to talk a little bit more about it, what it means, there are different ways that people refer to all or nothing thinking. Some people, you'll hear them talk about, he's a perfectionist, or she needs to get things done in a certain way. Oh, they're OCD about certain things. It's really not OCD. It's not necessarily perfectionism. But what it is it's a concept, a self-created concept that in order for me to be considered successful at task A, I need to make sure it gets done in a certain way. And whatever that image in my mind may be, anything less than that would be nothing. So I have a concept of all. For example, in order for me to be considered being a successful individual that brings home and supports my family, I need to make a minimum of $75,000 a year. Anything less than $75,000 a year is as if I'm not working at all. So there's really no difference. 75,000 being all. In other words, that is my concept. That's my threshold for absolute accomplishment, for getting what I need to get, for actually being considered that I can define myself as somebody who is making a living. And less than that is completely not doing that. So all would be the 75,000 and nothing would be anything less than that. So there's no difference between 74,000. I'm being facetious now a little bit, but there's no difference between making 74,000 and making zero. So when you have two options, two boxes in front of you, you have the all box or you have the nothing box, right? So what tends to happen is when a person has that kind of concept of the all box or the nothing box, what you're going to see a lot of is people being in the all box, they're going to give it their all, but the problem is it's not really that sustainable for long periods of time. And because simply nobody can sustain an all world. So what happens is the flip side, which is the only other alternative, and that is the nothing. So when you have all or nothing, you're more likely to end up doing nothing. Whenever you have somebody that has an issue with productivity, you need to be very, very keen on the possibility that there's an all or nothing kind of process here. That's one thing to keep in mind. Another thing to keep in mind is that different people have different ideas of what all might be. So if I have a non-realistic expectation of what all is, let's say I need to be a good person in my mind. I need to be a good person and follow all the rules. And anything that is contrary to that means that I didn't follow all the rules. So that makes me a bad person. So what happens is you're going to have that individual always believing that they're a bad person, because following all the rules all the time is simply not sustainable. So again, you're going to have this two boxes. One box is going to be being perfect, doing it exactly the way it needs to be done all the time. And the other box is going to be anything less than that is worthless. So therefore I'll do nothing. And you wouldn't, it may not appear this way, but you can't imagine how many times that is really takes such, is can be so debilitating and be the cause of so many people's downfall. That could be the downfall for so many people because they didn't get the memo that all is unattainable. And just because they assume that it needs to be a certain way and that all is that they're just because they assume that they have a good definition for all, and they assume that in order for them to be successful, that requires a complete all. So that concept causes them to do nothing. All or nothing equals nothing. The chances are going to be, if a person's all or nothing, they're very rarely going to be all because it's not sustainable. So the only other option is nothing. So they'll end up doing nothing. And I can't tell you how many people I see that are out of work. And part of the reason is because they have all these ideas, these concepts that they need to make X amount of money. They need to, starting at the bottom and working their way up is just not within their vocabulary, because that's really worthless because it's not all. So this is an issue. Perfectionism is something, it's a subdivision of that, right? Some people will, if they can't do their test thoroughly and make sure to get every single answer correctly, so there's no point in doing the whole test. So there's some sort of process here that is actually misguided. It's misguided in the sense that we sometimes will look at, let's say you have a test with 20 questions. Okay. So we get 18 out of 20. Not bad. That's decent, right? So we got 18 out of 20 correct. But then you have people that are not looking at getting each test question correct. That's not all. All or nothing kind of thinking, perfectionist kind of thinking can be very problematic and very debilitating and crippling. It can get in the way of people really being able to be productive, accomplished, and to be able to be successful. So part of what we need to understand when we're talking about this process of all or nothing is sometimes we need to get, where does it come from? It's important to take a little bit of a deeper look. Why are some people more prone to all or nothing thinking than others? And there's several answers to that. And it can be coming from different places. One place is very often a person's upbringing, right? We all know the famous philosophy of nature versus nurture. And when we are nurtured in a certain way, that sort of shapes our reality and our understanding of the way the world works. If you have somebody that grew up in a system, a family system where nothing was ever good enough, and you had a parent or parents that were constantly showing them how what they did, no matter what it was, didn't meet the expectations that they needed to get to. That is a big recipe for as psychodynamic as I try not to be sometimes, but perfectionism or all or nothing thinking is very often a product of the way a person was raised and the way their parents had expectations for them. And by repeatedly not being able to meet those expectations, they become conditioned to the fact that if I don't get everything, if I didn't do everything, then what I did was just simply not good enough. So there's no point in even doing that. So that's one aspect of all or nothing kind of thinking, of where it may come from. Another big aspect, and this is huge, are people that tend to have more of a black and white process about things. It's harder for them to see the gray areas, and things are usually narrowed down in their brain to either being black or white. Things are either right or wrong. Things are either hard or easy. Things are either good or bad. And we have several podcasts about the black and white thinker. But just to mention that kind of thinking, the black and white kind of thinking, is a very, very strong component to some of the all or nothing type of thinkers. Because again, it's not about, I can accomplish some things and let some things go. If I have a goal in mind, whatever that goal might be, right? The only way to break that down is, did I achieve that goal? Did I not achieve that goal? Am I doing well? Am I not doing well? And doing well doesn't mean getting 18 questions out of 20. Well means exactly what it means. Well, meaning doing good, meaning it's always good. Every question was answered correctly. So there's a couple different processes that can come along with this all or nothing kind of thinking. And there's another aspect to the all or nothing thinking, and that is some people, it could be a result of the nurture that I spoke about earlier, or it can have to do with the black and white kind of thinking. But what happens is people that have this all or nothing thinking, simply, it's not even a cognitive belief per se, but it's more like when I do everything right, then I have this feeling that I did it and I did well. If it's anything less than that, then I feel like I did nothing. If I feel like I did nothing, then I did nothing. So then I'm not going to do anything. It's almost like a sensation that people report that they have depending on what and how they accomplished or didn't accomplish, for that matter. So let's just talk about some practical examples of how this comes into play. The possibilities are endless. You see it all in so many different levels and so many different places and all different populations. Let's talk about your average. Let's talk about your average person, yeshiva boy that's trying to make it to Shachris. And what happens there is he misses chakras. He comes for a week, 2 weeks straight, great, day after day, and then he misses chakras. Once he misses chakras, what happens, the process becomes, well, I messed up my winning streak, right? I had a streak of coming. So I'm either a chakras goer or I'm a chakras misser. And when you miss, that means that now has officially taken me out of the chakras goer and put me in the category of the chakras misser. And now that changes my entire trajectory. Then now I'm going to be a chakras misser. And then at that point, what you'll see very often is that those boys that were doing well, were making it, are now stuck in a new pattern of not making it. And it takes a lot to get out of that pattern. We can be months and months at a time of being in that pattern. So you'll see this very interesting pattern of going, making it, and then the opposite end of the spectrum is that they end up just not going at all. And no matter what you do, no matter what they do, they cannot seem to get themselves out of that rut. Now, that's just one aspect. I've seen it in learning. We have boys that are, they're listening to the shiur, but because there's a couple points to the shiur that they didn't get, so they didn't get the shiur. Oh, if I didn't get the shiur, that means I'm not someone that gets the shiur. No matter how hard I try, I don't quote unquote get the shiur. If I don't get the shiur, I'm not even going to bother getting the shiur, right? Who's going to try to accomplish something and fail 10 times in a row and continue trying? It's not within human nature. So if I'm looking at the fact that I didn't get the entire shiur, because getting shiur means getting the whole shiur, understanding everything that Rebbe put down, understanding how everything works together. But when I start telling people, no, that's not how it works. You're here to try to get pieces of the shiur. That needs to be the goal. Oh, if the goal is getting pieces of the shiur, so I got a piece of the shiur. And then you have the same thing in people that are looking to build a career. Right? I want to have a career that is able to support my family, where I don't struggle and I'm able to sort of put money away for savings and to live a somewhat semi-comfortable life. Okay, that's a reasonable goal. The thing is that in order to get there, takes time. It takes working from the bottom up, and there's going to be a lot of tough days. There's going to be some days that you're not going to make what you want. There's going to be periods of time that it's going to be struggles until you get to that next level. But for the all or nothing thinker, that's not necessarily something that they're willing to go through, because again, if supporting my family means supporting them in a certain way, unless I find that job that's supporting them in the all way, I am not doing anything. So I might as well just, hey, if I'm not going to be making the amount of money under the terms that I need, that I consider to be reasonable, then I may as well just be sleeping in bed. And what ends up happening is many people are staying in bed. They're not putting in that effort because they just simply can't make it happen. So again, this all or nothing thinking can be so debilitating and be the cause for so many people's downfall that I can't even say how often I feel like this is a significant piece of why so many people struggle. You'll have those people in yeshiva that they'll, for the first week or two, they're going great. And then after that, it's downhill, and they can't seem to get back up. So what's the answer? What's the solution here? How do we work on this all or nothing thinking? How do we work on this perfectionism stuff? And is there hope? And of course there's hope. The answer is there's definitely hope. But again, if we're going to be looking for 100% no more all or nothing thinking, then what we're doing is we're just simply feeding into the same mindset of all or nothing, which is really dangerous. So the goal is, when you're working with somebody with all or nothing thinking, is the first thing is to be able to conceptualize, is that really what's going on over here? Is what's getting in the way for them, is there a significant piece of all or nothing thinking? And some clues to that might be, well, do they tend to be black and white? Is this tend to be a black and white thinker? If they tend to be a black and white thinker, then that might be something that there might be that all or nothing process going on. If there's an expectation, let's say you have a spouse that seems to have this all, that you suspect an all or nothing process, and then you kind of look into their upbringing, and yes, their parents were very demanding and didn't give enough credit for what they did accomplish, but rather gave too much feedback for what they didn't accomplish. That's something else. That's another reason to think deeper into this. Hey, is there some more of this all or nothing thinking? The idea, though, that we need to make clear to the all or nothing thinker is that when the mindset is all or nothing, the reality is going to end up being nothing, because all is non-sustainable. So therefore, I just first get them to understand on a logical level that all is not sustainable. So it's basically a recipe for self-destruction. And by the way, don't kid yourself. We all have an element of all or nothing thinking. When we're on a good streak, then it gives us the energy and the strength to keep going and to do better and to strive for more. But when we're feeling like we're not doing well, right? The question is the level of how much all or nothing really plays a role. For some people, they are so sensitive to the all or nothing that a little wrench in their plan or a dent in what they had expected in the first place can really throw them off kilter. So the solution becomes a few things. Number one is sometimes all or nothing the goal needs to be remapped out. The goal is no longer all in the way I thought of it. In other words, if I look at it that I have to have a great day, otherwise I had a terrible day. So that means the way I'm shaping my goal is through chunks of a day. So anything less than a full day of working out the way I want to, that would be called a good day, an entire day of things going the way I needed it to, right? And anything less than that would, by default, by definition, would be a bad day. So a person that has that equation, it's going to very often end up being that they had a bad day, right? But if the all is not looked at as a chunk of a day, but rather I'm not looking for my whole day to be good. I'm looking for different aspects to have been good. I'm looking to have had a part of my workday work out, or my downtime when I came home with my kids to have been a positive experience. Once I change the all, that it's not necessarily time-based, but maybe it's based on an activity that then you change the whole all or nothing dynamic. Another piece is the actual all or nothing. You don't need it's not about all. It never is about all. It's about seeing how much I can do that can be productive and that I can meet my goal. And it doesn't really matter how much it ends up being. It just matters that I can have a walk away each time with something. And this is hard for a lot of people, but what we do here in the therapy is to slowly to get them to recognize what those small successes are and to embrace them and sort of understand that this is the normal process where all or nothing is destructive. But if you sort of break it down and you accomplish, you look at the accomplishments that you're doing, you can appreciate the accomplishments that you're doing, then you're transforming what you're actually doing to success upon success. And as we know, success breeds success, and that's going to just help them become more and more successful and more of a buildup of their sense of self and what they can accomplish, and self-confidence. And that's the rundown on all or nothing. Again, just in a nutshell, as much as we spoke today about all or nothing, perfectionism, there's a lot to be talked about. There's so much, there's a lot of different techniques that can be used to help people through all or nothing. And as much as this podcast is trying to accomplish all the stuff about all or nothing, it's not all, right? Because it never is. But it's not nothing either. We had a great podcast here today, and this is a great place to start understanding the significance of how we conceptualize our tasks and how we can persevere despite the difficult times and despite the times that we think we're not getting where we need to get to. I've seen so many people that have had all or nothing thinking, and with the right sense of direction have been able to climb closer and closer and closer to appreciate what it is that they are accomplishing, and that only allows them to become more and more successful and eventually being extremely highly productive individuals.